Good afternoon, folks. My name is Eric Olson. I'm from Keenan. I am ready, and I'm here to talk about surviving an active assailant incident. The importance of this training. Unfortunately, we have to deal with these types of events not only in the educational sector, but out and abroad at shopping centers and malls and movie theaters. Fortunately, what the statistics show, that it's highly improbable that any one of us is going to be involved in one of these events. But I'm here to share with you this information, these life-saving tips that you can take if you were ever to face one of these types of incidents, whether it's here aboard Long Beach Community College or if it's out and about in the community. So some background on myself. I came from a military and law enforcement background. I had some exposure real world to these types of events. And what the training it involves is, and what we've incorporated are best practices, not only from state and local and federal law enforcement agencies, but our own personal experiences as well, and having to deal with and mitigate these types of events. All right, so active assailant. Instead of using the old phrase or terminology active shooter, what this is implying is that our assailant, that the person that's trying to actively hurt or kill us, may be using some other type of weapon or mechanism to do so. It may not involve the use of a firearm. Like we've seen tragically in recent weeks, the use of vehicles to injure or kill people has been utilized in New York City. Also, knife attacks or blunt instrument type objects. The point is that if somebody wants to commit any type of crime like this, they're going to find the mechanism and means to do so. But it's up to us as survivors and as professionals on this campus to throw as many of these techniques and these tips, these tactics in front of this person to delay them or ultimately dissuade them from even attempting that type of event. Now, based on the material that I'm going to share with you today, some of the images, the sights and sounds may be deemed sensitive. So if at any time it is deemed too sensitive for you, please feel free to turn away from the monitor if you deem necessary. But in order to realistically help you start shaping that survivor mindset, I have to expose you to some realistic material. And then point in case, this case study video, this came out of Florida back in 2010 at a school board meeting. And this particular school board meeting, an individual enters the chambers and threatens the lives of several of the board members in question. What I'd like you to do, ultimately, when you are watching this video, is to start identifying these windows of opportunity that open and shut, that you could do one of the three things we're going to talk about today, whether that's run, hide, or fight, because those opportunities present themselves in numerous occasions throughout the video.
There, and it's part of the plan we have, the workshop we're going to have following this meeting, but this will be the first step in that whole process. I have a motion. A motion. Everybody in this room, assholes, that counter, hit the road. Hey, whoa, hey, leave. Certainly leave. Julie, go. But when did you leave? Since being sick. Everyone else leave. Hey, sir. John, just let him talk. He's talking. John, go ahead. I'm gonna die. Can we talk for a minute? No. I've already been to prison. May I ask you a question? I've already been to prison. Can I ask you a question? Sure. Sir, I don't know. Back in January. All right. Sure, in this building? Elementary. John, get out.
see, our benefits have run out. We're broke. You see what I'm saying?
Please explain to us, sir. Just explain to us.
I'm not sure where she worked.
We'll talk to you.
One of the, either one of the grave ones.
Hey, listen to me. Look here. I'm a good guy.
I know you.
I've got a lot with my wife and family. I don't need to die. In the school board here, we just try to do what's best for children. I've been in the system. I was a principal 11 and a half years. I've got a great wife. I've been married to her 40 years. I've got 2 great boys. Please, just talk to us. If I can help you get your wife a job somewhere else, I'll be glad to do that. Yes, sir. No, you're not.
What did she do? I mean, because I really don't know who you're talking about, to be very honest with you. I have no idea who you're talking about.
She was fired.
I believe that when she said that, but what did she do?
Come on in.
Can you just talk to us a little bit about it? Where did she work at school? Just
We
tell
need
me.
some help, but no, he's.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh, I guess you're the one with the cops. Come on in.
No, I'm the school safety officer.
Oh, come on in.
You got a real gun there?
Come on in.
Nah, we're gonna wait a minute.
Tell me what she did.
They're calling the police as we speak.
I know that, but tell me what your wife did.
I'm gonna die. Okay.
Tell me what your wife did. If you're gonna kill yourself or kill us or whatever, at least let us know what's going on. Because I'll be very honest with you. I swear I don't know who your wife is or what she did. I don't. I don't want to die like anybody else does.
Mr. Westfeld signed the papers, I'm sure, but he doesn't know her. What's the situation?
I'm just asking,
Talk
what
to
did
us.
she do? Was she a teacher? Was she a paraprofessional? Did she work in the classroom? Did she work in the cafeteria? Was she a bus driver? I don't know.
Hey, I will go with you. I will stand up with you, get your wife a job, whatever it takes. Hey, these
Yeah,
other 4 guys.
Wait, listen. I'm the one that signed the paper, right? Okay. I don't remember and I don't know who she is. But let them go. I'm the one that did it. I mean, they don't sign the papers. I'm the only one that signs them. Will you let them go? I mean, but you're obviously upset at me. So why are they here?
They're part of it.
Part of what?
Scam.
Sir, I don't know what
You
you...
ran to stop taxes, okay? You said, we don't need no taxes.
No, that's not
Plenty of
what you
money. Then as soon as you gutted the school system, then you turned around and said, oh, now we need to have some sales tax again.
I said we needed to have some sales tax from the very beginning. I campaigned on that. Oh, yes, I did. You can look on the material. I said from the beginning to have sales tax is the most equitable way because everybody pays it, not just property owners. Look, see, here's what I don't want to happen. I don't want anybody to, just listen to me for a minute. I don't want anybody to get hurt, and I've got a feeling that what you want is the cops come in and kill you because you're mad. Because you said you're going to die with that. But why? This isn't worth it. This is a problem. Please don't. Please don't. Please.
Real, I don't think. I think it's... He had cats, Mike. That's what he wanted right there, Mike. That's what I was trying to talk to him. I knew it. But I'm not. You'll be good. I'm fine.
All right, so some of those opportunistic windows that open and close themselves more rapidly, some more rapidly than others. I think the first sign that something is not right here is when the gentleman stands up and he starts spray painting the V for Vendetta symbol on the wall of that chamber hall. And the significance of that symbology is from that movie that came out in the early 2000s. The entire movie was about revenge, and it did not end well for a lot of the folks in the movie. So for me personally, sitting in an open forum like that, when an individual stands up and starts spray painting that type of symbology, I'm more apt to start looking for an exit route to get away from this individual. And more than likely, what happened, several of the members in that audience were staring at this type of behavior, wondering if this was even occurring, in a state of shock. I think it only became serious once that individual produces the weapon and starts threatening people, and in which some individuals in that crowd took the opportunity to flee the chamber, and rightfully so. We also have some other opportunities present themselves when Ginger comes out of that side closet and basically strikes the assailant with a handbag. While it wasn't the incapacitating blow that she delivered to this individual, what it did do is temporarily distract him. And that would have given those board members who this assailant was really focusing his attention on this assailant, because they had the numbers. They had 6 of them versus the one assailant. And he turned his back to them, not only in that event, but multiple times, speaking with a security guard that comes in off camera and taking his attention off them to elsewhere. Now, that's important because it's up to us to identify those fleeting moments and capitalize on quickly in order to save ourselves and others. What's interesting about this video, which is a little bit outside of the norm statistically for these active assailant events, is he engages in dialogue with his intended victims. What we see across the board with these active assailant events, typically the duration is anywhere from between 4 to 8 minutes. And that's about as long as law enforcement is going to take to respond and mitigate this problem. Anywhere from 4 to 8 minutes, there isn't usually dialogue back and forth, and it's over, usually one of 3 ways. The assailant will give up to law enforcement, they will take themselves out of the event, or law enforcement will take them out of the event as well. And in this case, what you didn't see, because this is an edited video, is that there's an off-duty police officer and an armed security guard that enter the chambers and get into a shooting with this assailant. Miraculously, the only individual that is shot and killed is the assailant himself. But this dialogue is interesting because several of the members on the board are attempting to de-escalate the situation. And some of the high notes that I think, some of the positive things that they were saying, were attempting to humanize the situation. We're attempting to, at one point, one individual said that he would assist this individual in helping his wife get a job back. And ultimately, if he's not able to produce that, what I think the intent is to ultimately try to basically delay this situation, knowing that we have a 48-minute window, and that every second that goes by and we can keep this individual talking, if this assailant is willing to speak, there's another second that law enforcement is getting closer to us. Some things we want to avoid, like one member of the board member found out, is that we probably want to avoid getting into an argument with this individual, interrupting this individual, or even the tone of our voice. We want to try to focus in on positive imagery and positive solutions rather than negative solutions, like getting into an argument about what we campaigned on. That's not the appropriate measure, especially when we've got an individual pointing a weapon at you or those nearby. So interesting nonetheless. And there was a little statement that was put out right at the end of the video. One of the gentlemen on the board basically comes out from behind the counter and says, "Hey, I think he had caps, Mike," inferring that the assailant had a weapon loaded with blank ammunition. That was, in fact, a real firearm with real bullets and real projectiles. And this individual misses from no closer than me to my computer screen. There's some interesting things going on internally when we start talking about stress, and the assailant is susceptible to those stressors, meaning in a traumatic, rapidly evolving situation, high adrenaline type of situation, human beings are going to suffer, and their more specifically, their fine motor skills, the ability to accurately shoot at objects, will diminish. And this assailant is susceptible to that as well. What we know statistically about our assailants is that while predominantly male, in their late teens or early 20s, this gentleman's outside of that demographic. He does fit one category, in that he is not trained militaristically or have any combat experience. And that's a feather in our cap for survivability, because if this person is untrained, unskilled, and they are going to be susceptible to those stressors, those physiological stressors. They're going to make mistakes, including missing targets that are that close. That's important for us to know, because if this person's going to make mistakes, which this individual did several times in this video, turning his back towards his intended victims, allowing Ginger to get the best of him and strike him with an object, even though it wasn't extremely effective. We need to identify when those events happen, when this individual makes those mistakes, and capitalize in order to save ourselves and others. So what are some of the things we can do as a district, as a campus, or individually to reduce the potential for these attacks? Because unfortunately, these things that I'm going to share with you today, they're not going to stop these events from occurring in our communities and unfortunately in our educational environment. But some of these things that we're going to talk about can and have been utilized to save people. So some things that you're physically doing or seeing on this campus and Long Beach Community College, both at LAC and PCC, are a robust security camera network, an integrated police department with the Long Beach Police Department. You have sworn police officers and security guards, both actively working on each campus. You've got limited or denial of access features, meaning certain individuals who are not authorized to go into certain places can't. And more importantly, you just sitting here listening to this lecture and learning these tips and tactics and techniques is a reduction for the potential of an attack. If you were unfortunately ever involved in one of these events, you are now going to be armed with the information that's vital to your success, saving yourself and others. So as it stands right now, national best practice is run, hide, fight. There's several other companies and acronyms out there that basically deliver the same message, but they're extremely convoluted. And I frankly can't remember what they all stand for. Sure, the one thing that you will forget is run, hide, fight. And this goes back to when we had to face it off with a saber-toothed tiger, and it decided it was going to jump out of a tree and make a lunch out of us. We did one of these three things. We ran, we hid from it, or we fought it. The one thing that you will not see in the slide is the captions, sit there and do nothing, like those school board officials did. We know that we have to continue to think through this process and do things in order to save ourselves and others. We have to avoid succumbing to that paralysis, that overarching fear that may sit in with us once we're stressed to the point that these individuals were. And on that topic of run, hide, fight, it's not a linear equation. We don't just start at run and then running isn't working anymore. And now I have to hide from this assailant, and now hiding isn't working because they're in my space. And now I may have to fight if that's my last ditch effort. You select any one of these techniques that's going to work at any given moment, but it's based on your capabilities, what you're comfortable doing and what you can do. Whether you have the ability to turn the space that you're in into a defensible place, you can barricade yourself into that spot. Or if you are moving through an environment to get away from the assailant and we're now face to face with them and you have no other options, how do we fight through this problem? And I'm going to share with you those techniques and those tips. So painting the picture, solidifying why this isn't a linear equation, and more importantly, why we shouldn't get cemented and stuck into one technique. An event that happened in Michigan back in 2020 was an active shooting event that happened. 15-year-old student brings his father's handgun to school and unfortunately shoots and kills several of his classmates. Now, these students in this class in particular, they started in a lockdown. They did everything right. They shut the door, locked it, they turned the lights off, got themselves down low to the ground. Something changed in their environment where it was no longer safe to stay in a lockdown posture.
Yeah, we're here. Yeah, we're here. Yes. Sheriff's office. They can come out. We're not willing to take that risk right now. I can't hear you. We're not taking that risk right now. Okay, well, come to the door and look at my bag, bro.
Yeah, bro.
He said bro.
He said bro. Red flag.
Slow down, you're fine.
All right. That was indeed a red flag. That was the assailant on the other side of the door, that classroom door, attempting to bait or lure those students and that faculty member out to his position in the hallway. And furthermore, the use of dude or bro by law enforcement in that type of situation is probably not going to happen. And more importantly, how law enforcement responds and reacts and trains to these types of events. What is taught predominantly across the nation is when they receive the call that an active assailant event is occurring, they are taught to address or announce themselves outside of the door by knocking loudly on the door frame or the door itself, advising you that it's a police officer, sheriff's deputy, or whatever agency they're with. They're going to have in their possession the access keys or the mechanical key in order to get into the door of that space that you're in, either by accessing those keys through maintenance and operations or through Knox box devices. There are box devices that are pre-located in certain locations on the outside of a building that contain those keys. Once they open that door, they're not just going to rush into the room because they're anticipating whoever is inside that space may potentially defend themselves by whatever means necessary, meaning they don't want to get struck in the head by a fire hydrant or a fire extinguisher or a 3-hole punch. Okay, so once they open the door, more than likely, depending on the lighting situation in the room, they're going to illuminate that space with some light, illuminate themselves with that white light, demonstrating and portraying that they are a uniformed police officer. Once they do so, they're going to continue to announce their presence, and then they're going to make a very deliberate entry inside of that space. It is not going to look like that. And those students thankfully registered that as a threat. And they knew that if they stayed any longer in that classroom, the likelihood of that assailant firing indiscriminately through that door was extremely high. So they chose to switch gears to a run, to getting away from that situation, which ultimately saved their lives. So moving on to run. Unfortunately, if you were involved in a situation, the best situation that you were now involved in is the one you can get away from. So if you can move, please do so. If you need to get into a vehicle to leave or flee, or if you need to use your feet to move, do so. But this is going to require effort, physical effort, and depending on your physical stature, if we can move rapidly, or those around us, if they have the ability to physically move, that's going to weigh into this factor as well. Having spoke with several Highway 91 shooting survivors from the Las Vegas tragedy in 2017, some of those folks that I spoke with, speaking with them specifically on how they moved away from that concert venue, the method of which they moved was eerily similar to what we would do in the military and law enforcement, and specifically how they moved. In the military and law enforcement, we called their movement and how they moved bounding. You can think of it as almost in terms of playing a game of leapfrog. Now, on the onset of the gunfire, these individuals dropped themselves down to the floor and got as low as they could. It was extremely disorienting. They had no idea where the initial gunfire was coming from. Once they were down on the ground, again, presenting less of a target to the assailant, who we now know was elevated in a hotel room in the Mandalay Bay. They identified several places that they could run to that were relatively close by. And this one particular object was a steel trash enclosure that was about 30 to 40 yards away. In between lulls and gunfire, they got themselves up, gathered several other survivors, and sprinted towards that steel trash enclosure. Once they got down behind that enclosure, they started identifying another object that they could move behind. And in this case, it was several concrete jersey barriers that protected the concert goers from vehicles in the parking lot. And those were about 20 to 30 yards away. They sprinted to those objects and got down behind them. Again, they were playing this game of leapfrog, moving from different points of cover to different points of cover until they were ultimately out of view of the assailant. And it's important to take into consideration the objects that we may take shelter behind or cover behind. Those objects that I explained or demonstrated were made of concrete, made of steel. Those objects are going to do two things for us. They were going to conceal us, and they're going to provide ballistic protection, meaning bullets are not going to be able to penetrate that object and strike us. That's important to know because if I'm taking shelter behind some type of object, I want to know its ability and its propensity to protect me and not only hide me, but protect me from my assailant. Other things in our environment that could provide us some cover are going to be depressions in the earth. If I can get down low in a culvert, if I can hide behind an earthen berm, or if I can get down behind a large tree in particular, those objects will protect you. If I have nothing else in my environment but to hide behind something, but it may not necessarily provide ballistic protection, those objects may be a bush. If I flip a table over and hide behind that, if I hide behind a door or a curtain, while I am taking away the ability for my assailant to see me, those projectiles that are directed at me may penetrate that object and hurt me. So it's important to know if we're moving to a position or moving behind something to hide behind or take cover, what its ability to protect me is. All right. Depending on where you are and when this event starts or happens, when we get the alert if we're in our classrooms, we're in an office space or setting, and we hear gunfire and it's in close proximity to us, or we get the alert to lock ourselves down, whatever that space is, if we have the ability to, we're going to turn it into a fortress. Okay, nobody's going to go in or out of that space. And there's certain things we're going to do to make sure that that happens. We're going to ensure that that door, that access point inside of that room is closed, attempt to lock it if it is affixed with a locking mechanism. We're going to turn the lights off. If we have the ability to draw a shade over the windows or cover the windows, get ourselves down low to the ground, away from those doorways and those windows, if we can. Remember to silence our cell phones because these events are going to be broadcast over multimedia, social media, and people may want to contact you. And ultimately, we're trying to do is paint the picture to our assailant that this is an unoccupied space to go find easier targets elsewhere. Again, knowing that our opponent is untrained, unskilled, and operating off a compressed time frame, we've found statistically that they're not going to take the time to burrow through a wall or a commercial grade door. Taking it a step further, unfortunately, with the events of Uvalde, Texas, that school shooting that happened last summer, what we've learned is that classroom door in particular, the locking mechanism on the door was malfunctioning, and it was known to malfunction, meaning the administrators and the facility managers and faculty members knew that that door would malfunction. Anticipating that my door may open or the assailant has a key to my door, I'm going to attempt to barricade using every available item in that room. Like you see here, we've taken desks and chairs and shoved it against that doorway. In the event that that door opens when I don't want it to, the assailant has to crawl through all of those objects in order to get at me or get inside my space. So again, just further delaying and creating a buffer in between me and my assailant who's trying to hurt me. On the left-hand side of the screen, this is a real-world event happened in Northern California at a high school. The occupants of that room threw everything against the door. And I've been staring at this door now for over a year, facilitating this training, and I still can't find the door. This is exactly what we're looking for here. Just an absolute jumbled, jarbled mess with chairs and desk legs and tables and books, anything that we can get our hands on to shove against that doorway. On the right-hand side are some neatly stack our chairs against the door or position them in a way that anybody can push them over. Or in the bottom screen, you see that it almost looks like we're hiding behind these desks if they were shields. Again, take those objects and throw them against the door in a chaotic fashion, creating those barriers. If we're in a space that's confined and we do not have the luxury of having any objects to barricade ourselves, meaning it doesn't have chairs or desks or shelves that we can push against that doorway, I can limit that ability of the door to open or function, but I have to understand how that door operates, meaning does the door open away from me or does the door pull inward towards me in my intimate space? Most of your, if not all of your commercial grade doors are going to have a self-closing mechanism. That mechanism more than likely, and like you see in that center screen, are going to have some type of device, be it rectangular or a square type device or cylindrical, and it's going to have an arm that articulates open and closed. If I take the belt that I'm wearing right now, or if I take some HDMI cable in this office that I'm in, or if I take my lanyard that I have my identification card hanging from, and I wrap that material, that item around that arm as it remains closed when the door is in a closed position, it's going to not allow that mechanism or that arm to expand open like an accordion, thus eliminating that door's ability to open if I don't want it to. If I occupy a space and I'm familiar with that space, I'm going to take the time or should take the time to go and get some commercial grade door stops. If the door opens inward, door stops shoved underneath the door frame are not going to, or they're going to prevent that door from opening inward at me. The important thing is here is identifying how the door functions, and more importantly, how I can eliminate that door from opening and closing if I don't want it to. Okay, commercial grade barricade devices. A lot of these things exist, and they exist in the commercial capacity to eliminate burglaries or thefts into spaces by denying access or eliminating the ability for that door to open up. The problem with these types of devices is if we go out and we put one of these things on a doorway, and other people that may access that space, coworkers or fellow students that may occupy this space, they may not understand how that object or that device functions, meaning in a critical event, an emergency, well, we've limited people's ability to see with limited visibility through smoke or lighting, and now we've induced some stress. The likelihood of their failure to unlock or unlatch this device increases. So the purpose is that if we identify an object and we like this object as a district, let's get it vetted, but more importantly, let's train others on its usage. Absent using one of these devices, let's trust but verify that our lock mechanisms on these doors at Long Beach Community College are indeed functioning, and trust that they are going to do their job. We turn that knob or lock that door, however the functionality works, that they remain closed. Okay, fighting for our life. This is a moral and ethical dilemma that unfortunately I can't tell you to do. Nobody else on this planet can tell you or push you into this arena. This is something that you're going to have to do yourselves, okay? But in order to understand that mindset, to fight for our lives, we have to understand that this is the last ditch effort, and that this individual coming into this space, wherever it is attempting to take our lives and the lives of those around us, maybe including our family members. So it's not going to be a fair fight. Like we see demonstrated in this video, several of the individuals have positioned themselves on the corner of this space. Again, this individual has a weapon system that I do not have possession of, but I have the benefit of knowing the layout of my room. And I'm going to take the advantage of hiding in the corners, basically ambushing this individual once he presents himself through that doorway. And if I have the ability to throw something at this individual, a pot of hot coffee, strike this individual, or squirt this high pressure fire extinguisher at them, I'm creating that starter response that's going to give me some time, delaying some time in order for me to facilitate what I'm going to do next. Grapple with this individual, attempt to restrain that weapon, or wrestle him down to the ground. And everything is at your disposal at this point. If we can throw that hot coffee at this individual, if I can take some sort of blunt object and strike them, if I can grapple with this individual, have the added benefit of having somebody else with me to do so, I'm going to do it, because this is it. There's nothing else that's going to work at this point. Running is not working, and hiding is definitely not working in this with this type of tactic or event that's devolved. If someone is shooting at you, from personal and professional experience, it's a very traumatic event. We may experience temporary paralysis, meaning we may not be able to move because we're under that much duress and shock. But we know that we need to continue to move through this process and think about solutions, and we need to get ourselves away from that problem. How do we do so? In the military and law enforcement, those personnel, they're exposed to hyper-realistic training scenarios where they almost become used to the adrenaline surge and how to mitigate those stresses and how to become comfortable operating in that type of environment. I can't do that via Zoom call, but what I can help you do in order to mitigate those stressors is tell you to breathe. In yoga classes, in athletic circles, or with Blue Angel demonstration pilots will tell you this. They go through a rhythmic breathing process, athletic breathing or combat breathing, however you want to coin it. But what it looks like is you're taking about 4 to 5 seconds of breath in, you're holding it for 4 to 5 seconds, and then you're releasing it for 4 to 5 seconds. So we do that in a systematic, rhythmic fashion. What we're doing internally to ourselves, we're lowering that heart rate, we're mitigating the effects of tunnel vision. Some folks in high stress situations will have induced, they're going to have limited hearing abilities. And then sometimes we may experience loss of fine motor skills. And I need all those systems to work for me if I am using my peripheral vision to identify places to seek shelter behind. I need to mitigate the effects of that auditory exclusion, that loss of hearing, to hear threats around me and I need to be able to use my hands for dexterity to manipulate door handles to get away, to call 911, or to identify and pick up an object in order to defend myself. That's my last ditch effort. So breathe through the process. There's an interesting phenomenon or an acronym called the OODA loop. It stands for OODA. All right. It stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. It was a term that was coined, or an acronym that was coined in the Korean War. It was developed and designed to help our pilots outthink and outperform enemy combatants, enemy airplanes. And how can we use that acronym against an opponent or an assailant? Well, I guarantee you, if you've ever driven in Southern California, you've gone through an OODA loop process. Meaning when we're driving down a crowded freeway or a busy freeway and we observe somebody cutting us off into our lane of traffic, precipitating a near collision, we go into our first O, which is observe. You observe somebody coming into your lane, which poses a danger to you. You orient to that problem, so you start looking at that vehicle in your lane of traffic. Now we go into the decision-making process. You decide if you're going to go left into a guardrail, you're going to go right and swerve into an oncoming vehicle, or you decide that you're going to hit your brakes and avoid the collision altogether. So human beings do this OODA loop cycle every time they're presented with a high stress situation. Now, how can we use that against our assailant? They're going through their OODA loop cycle too. Just like that Air Force colonel determined, if we can stunt or limit the ability or distract the ability for that opponent, our assailant, to think through their cycle, similarly what Ginger did in the video from Florida, strike this individual with a handbag process. If we can do that, we can capitalize on that mistake while we continue to think through our decision-making process. Point in case, this individual that's going to come into scene here is attempting to rob this gentleman of more than likely his personal possessions. Now, I guarantee you that individual, the robber in question, did not anticipate that his intended victim was going to take his weapon out of his hands and point it back at him. His ability to think through his OODA loop cycle was stunted while the victim was continuing to process the information and decide and act on what he was going to do. Okay, we have the ability to take the initiative and stop them from thinking through the OODA loop process, but we have to be very deliberate about our actions. Okay, if we are injured, if we've sustained an injury, a traumatic injury, if we've been shot or stabbed or injured in by some mechanism, it's important not to panic. Okay, it's easy to say that over a Zoom call when nobody is stressing us out and threatening us, but in order to survive this event, we need to remain calm, and you need to tell yourself that you're going to survive and live through this event. All right, you need to trust your body. This human body that we have is an amazing machine. It can take a lot of damage. But unfortunately, if we succumb to that fear and that pain and we tell ourselves that or allow ourselves to think we may die, what we're doing internally is allowing that heart rate to race to accelerated heights. And unfortunately, you will expire at that point. So it's important to remain calm, attempt to breathe, try to lower that heart rate as best as you can, and always have a positive mindset and tell yourself you're going to survive. The last point, first responding officers. What does it look like when they enter our space? How do they deploy into these active assailant events? And more importantly, how do we integrate with them to ensure that we're safe when they do these operations into our environment? Police officers, sheriff's deputies are taught in the academy level that they were to respond to these active assailant events, that the first initial officers are to unfortunately bypass visibly injured folks or persons in that environment in order to locate and find and stop that active assailant. That means we may have police officers, law enforcement officers running past us, and we may have visible injuries. Unfortunately, they don't have the time or the luxury to stop and render us aid. Their job initially is to stop the threat. How do we integrate with that? Okay, so things that we should and shouldn't do: allow them to go past us, avoid reaching out or impeding their mobility to move through our space, avoid making any type of furtive movements, any type of reaching out with any type of object that they may deem as a weapon, and follow all the commands, just like those folks in the Florida video had done once those police officers entered that chamber hall. Follow all the commands. It will be traumatic. They are going to be pointing weapons because they are anticipating or perceiving that anything in that space could be a potential threat. And so in order for them to control the situation, they need to aggressively control people. And that may mean yelling at individuals and ordering to the ground. Go to the ground, follow those commands. They're going to eventually figure out that you're not the involved party, and then they're going to get you to safety if you need medical attention. All right, folks, that concludes our active assailant training seminar. I hope that you never even have to remotely think or use one of these tactics or techniques. But if you are unfortunately involved in a scenario like this, I hope that I've given you enough tools and tips and tactics in order to save yourself and others. Thank you for your attention and have a great day.